So we'll have an opportunity to get to everyone's questions. I encourage you to keep sending them to us. I thought I'd briefly share an example of a strong recognition program that was made stronger by the use of social business software, and then welcome Roy and Stephen Green back for their perspectives. Some of you may have had the opportunity to read the cover story from the recent edition of Engagement Strategies magazine that featured TD Canada Trust and their Wow Moments program. TD actually had a long standing rewards and recognition program called Moments of Truth that encouraged employees to submit stories about heroic interactions with customers into a database. At the end of the day, though, less than 10 of those stories made their way out of the database to be shared with the company at large. TD sought to involve their employees in the recognition program, giving them the opportunity to praise, congratulate, and support their peers. They implemented an internal social networking program using Polstream's The Hive, and Wow Moments was born. The focus shifted to include more employees in the program and recognize the little things that TD employees do every day to connect with customers. This unmoderated online program gives employees the opportunity to post stories about things they've done or that they've observed other people doing to build and support a positive customer experience. The program now involves 35,000 employees in some 1,100 branches and support offices across Canada, and this year alone, 65% of employees covered by the program have contributed stories. Since its launch, more than 70,000 stories have been posted. As Carrie Stanley of TD says in the article, interestingly, quote, our employees are finding that things are not so very different in various corners of the country. We have the same challenges and the same opportunities. Before I bring Roy and Stephen back into the fray, I think there are a couple key learnings from this story. First of all, public validation by your peers makes you feel valued. If you believe that your efforts matter, then you're less likely to leave and more likely to make a greater contribution. The program also serves as a repository of stories that would otherwise go untold. The act of publicly celebrating these stories helps to shape the culture of the company. Searching and browsing the stories in the program is easy and it's interesting. It's easier to connect with distant colleagues after you've read a compelling story about them. And then I think finally, when your peers recognize your contributions, they're publicly validating your skills. And since the program is searchable, your successes are seen by the entire company. And the sender also benefits by visibly demonstrating managerial skills. So a lot at play here. It was a great example. I want to bring Roy back and welcome Stephen Green onto the call.
Yep.
You there with us, Stephen?
I am, absolutely. And Roy, thanks very much. That was a very clear and excellent presentation.
Thank you, Steve.
And for those on the line, Roy's book is a must-read. It's very concise, and there's tons of really great information in there.
That's great. So, Stephen, I'm going to begin with you. You've worked very closely with TD. At a high level, what's been the win for their organization and their employees with Wow Moments?
Well, there's been a win for the company, and there's been a win for the employees. They certainly overlap with each other. But as you mentioned, the program that they had in place before was a very good program, but it was a program where there was a nomination process, and then there was a group of people who would evaluate, and they would select winners. And in that environment, what happens is you end up selecting the real standout stories, the exceptional stories. So historically, the people who were doing things that really were a one-off type of behavior. The way I like to summarize it is, this is a retail network we're talking about. So somebody comes into a branch and, they have a heart attack in the branch, and someone leaps over from TD over the wicket, and they apply life-saving technique, and the person revives, and they end up bringing their mortgage and their business banking to the branch. That's a great story. And those would be celebrated. But I think as time went by, TD realized that they were really looking for a program that would celebrate the repeatable behaviors that really make an impact on the most number of customers most frequently. So through TD, the Wow Moments program that's run through the Hive, you have a chance of celebrating on a peer-to-peer basis all of these behaviors that people see day to day in the branches that are really having an impact, that other people who are reading these stories in the gallery are able to say, wow, I can do that too. So that has a big impact on the organization in achieving higher customer satisfaction index scores, which is a big objective for all businesses.
Roy, I'll turn to you. One of the things
Mm-hmm.
that the article talks about is a culture of recognition. We touched on it briefly during your remarks, but
Right.
can you again emphasize, how important is it that these programs are actually ingrained in the culture?
Well, I think it's very important because I always believe that it's culture that actually drives recognition, and then recognition reinforces the culture.
Mm.
And with the system that you have here for the WOW movements using the Hive, I think you're really getting so much closer to what we sometimes use, the everyday recognition versus the informal and formal recognition, which starts to encroach more on that reward side as we led off our discussion today, and is much more the real recognition that needs to happen. And it's the everyday kind of recognition that this kind of system and process allows that really does build up people and lifts the morale, and in turn elevates the performance.
And the nice thing about the public format is that it's sustained,
Mm-hmm.
in that you're able to earn recognition and build a profile within the workplace regardless of your position in the org chart. When people see you doing a good job, whether you're a senior manager, whether you've been there for a week, whether you're in the middle of the main office at corporate headquarters in a smaller branch, the peer-to-peer opportunity allows all those contributions to be weighted and publicly celebrated and be permanent.
That's great. And so my next question is for you both, and you've both begun to touch on it. The article talks as well about the fact that most of these stories remain locked inside the database, never to see the light of day. How important is something like institutional memory to a program like this? And either of you can take it first.
Wow, institutional memory. I hadn't heard that term before. That's a good one.
It's a beauty.
Yeah. But I think just the kind of heritage posterity kind of effect I think is very important. But in the everyday kind of face-to-face recognition, we often praise and acknowledge people for giving what we call secondhand compliments. Where so you might have heard someone praised behind their back, and so why not go ahead and deliver that acknowledgement from party A over here and tell the individual, hey, I just heard someone acknowledge you for doing this project so well, or getting this done on time. Way to go. That's like a second-hand compliment. What I think is remarkable about this Hive and the WOW moments thing is that, my goodness, how many compliments could you get on top of that? I mean, it just magnifies it. So that's one element. And then I think the part of creating that memory is, of course, the data that you can pull out. And I think if there's one trend that I'm seeing emerging right now within employee recognition, is the need to prove business impact and ROI. And I think as this system allows you to come down to the base of the pyramid where everyday recognition is so important, it also allows you to measure those outputs and sharings.
That's a great point. Stephen, what would you add to that?
I'll call institutional memory by another name. I'll call it an asset. And when when you get a collection of stories about people and their contributions that were previously invisible, and now all of a sudden you know the events and the people tied to those events that added value to the organization, and you from any place in the organization can go and access that information. And say you're assigned to do a product launch and you're in a smaller branch and you've never done one before, you can simply go into WOW Moments and you can search for product launch and find all the people who other people said had done a great job, and you can find all the elements that were tied to that product launch. Then that's retained knowledge. That becomes an asset. The learning curve is shortened, access to the right people is made more direct, and you have a very, very valuable resource.
That's a great point. I think, mindful of our time and that we do have some questions coming in, I have time for one more question with the both of you. Roy, during your remarks, you presented a continuum where a combination of consistency, credibility, and trust led to strong relationships. And I guess for both of you, are these the sorts of solutions that follow the line and lead to more meaningful relationships, programs like WOW Moments?
Oh, very much so. I think, again, what you've created is within the social network medium, which we're all familiar with, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, and other tools. I think as Stephen was just commenting, that this is within your organization. This is the culture. This is developed for an organization by their people. I don't think there's too many other tools out there where everyone can contribute to the culture of an organization every day by acknowledging other people that they work with, and even learning, as Stephen was just sharing, about this asset of knowing what other people are doing. And that repository is just huge. So if we can get consistent at doing these kinds of actions, the credibility factor is just going to go off the chart. And so the trust can't help but build within an organization by this cross-pollination of acknowledgement and sharing.